Well, hello, welcome to Open Classroom, the Brown School's free digital forum to explore social work, public health, social policy. We are so glad that you're here. My name is Laurie McConnell. I'm a communications coordinator here at the Brown School. I'm really looking forward to our webinar today, Tips and Tools for Helping Kids Thrive in the Upcoming School Year. But first, I want to quickly just do a little bit of housekeeping. This is a webinar format, so we can't see or hear you, but we would love to know your thoughts, your questions. Please put them into the chat and we'll have a chance for our presenter to answer questions at the very end of the program. So just put them in whenever they come to mind and I'll collect them and we'll ask them at the end. Also, I just want to let you know about some future Open Classroom webinars. This Thursday, we have monkeypox is going to be explored and explained with a brilliant doctor from Washington University. I'm really looking forward to that. We have everything coming up from robotics and ethics to voting to transforming research by listening to people with lived experience. So in a minute, I will put in the chat a link to our Open Classroom webpage. You can go there to get registered for any free Open Classroom webinars that are of interest to you. But now the one that's really interesting to you today is tips and tools for helping kids thrive in the upcoming school year. We are honored to have Stephanie Malia Krauss, MSW. Now, Stephanie is a Brown School alum from 2008, senior advisor for Jobs for the Future, the founder and principal consultant of First Quarter Strategies, LLC, a senior fellow to Education Northwest and the Ceres Institute for Children and Youth, a staff consultant for the Youth Transition Funders Group, a mom, maybe the hardest job on this list. And as if all of that wasn't enough to keep her busy, she's also a wonderful writer, author of Making It What Today's Kids Need for Tomorrow's World. I will also put a link where you can find that book in the chat. And then she has another book coming out in 2023, Whole Child, Whole Life, 10 Ways to Help Kids Live, Learn, and Thrive. So Stephanie, thank you so much for all you do. Thank you for being here. We are super interested in hearing what you have to say. So I'm going to stop talking and let you take the floor. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lori. And before you drop off here, I want to make sure that you can see me, and you can, if you want, you can stay on here for this first part because Lori is still on the newer side of her role. And so she was not here the last time that I did an Open Classroom. And so I'm curious, using your chat, if you were a part of a very memorable Open Classroom about a year ago, please add it into the chat. And if you weren't, if you will indulge me for a minute, I would just love to tell you what happened the last time I was here, because I came into this conversation a little nervous about making sure that any possible risk, oh, Chrissy B, yeah, so any possible risk was navigated around. So Chrissy B, I'm about to, so Jerry, just wait until you hear this story. I'm about to confess to you what actually happened a year ago, most of which people who were here experienced in real time, but there's one part of the story that people don't know. So about a year ago, I did an Open Classroom just like this, and my husband and I met at the Brown School. So he was logged in as one of the attendees, and I was on my first vacation since the pandemic down in Florida in a hotel room, and I had taken a day trip just to be by myself with nobody else. And I was so excited. And this was the one thing I was going to do. And I had a brand new smartwatch, one of these things that tells you, your workout and everything else. So the first thing that happened, Chrissy B, which you don't know, was that when I started, if any of you have before, your breathing and your heart rate change because you're getting ready to present and you're nervous and excited. So a couple of minutes into the presentation, my watch started buzzing and screaming at me, and it told me I was having a dangerous heart rate and to seek help immediately. And Chrissy B, if you remember, that was the moment where I lied to everyone. And in a moment of incredible not self-care, instead of telling you that I was having an irregular heart rate, I said that my kids were trying to text, and I just took off the watch and threw it across the room. But then I realized that my lie was a bad one because my husband was on the line and he would be worried that my kids were not okay. So then I had to continue the lie and talk about how my kids were really fine and dig myself out. I want to say it was probably 20 minutes later, I heard incredible banging on this hotel room door and I ignored it. And then it continued. And then I was very embarrassed and told all of you that I had to go on mute to see who was at the door. And so I said, I'm busy. And they said, the hotel is on fire. You have to evacuate. And so the last time I was here, I wasn't sure if I was having a heart attack. Thank God I was not. Everything was fine. It was just nerves. I lied to you all, and I'm really sorry about that. And then the hotel caught on fire, and it was a true fire. So I'm glad to report that I am at home in my basement with my dogs. I think that all of the circumstances are fine, but that's how committed I am to the Brown School, I will say. And Lori, I'm just really thrilled that you even wanted to have me back. So no, Christine, it was the opposite of relaxing. And yeah, it was just the worst. Chrissy B, absolutely. It was very nerve-wracking for me too. And it was just like, for anybody else who's a working parent, it was just such a fail of trying to get like a little time to myself. So that is the context of the last time I was here, when we were still in kind of the hovels of the pandemic and starting to reemerge a little bit. And so here we are, we're about to start a new school year again. If you are in the Missouri or Illinois area, then, you know, my children are starting actually their 4th week of school already, this sort of 3 full weeks and 2 days. And I know on the Missouri side, they're about 2 weeks in. So we're in it, and things feel kind of normal in a scary, eerie kind of way. But we've re-emerged in many ways, and we're recovering in many ways. And so where I want to start us today, first, again, thank you for letting me share that story, is really being able to hear from you. So we're going to use something to get us just kicked off that will require a little bit of engagement from you in order to be really satisfying to see who's on the line. And it's called Mentimeter. So what I'd like you to do is pick up your phone or pull up the browser on your computer. I'm putting into the chat. You're going to www.menti.com. And here in a second, I'm going to share my screen so that you can see it. It's going to ask you for a code. And so if you are listening and not able to see the chat, I'm going to read that code. So you go to www.menti.com, and then the code is 73103619. And what is important to me before we talk about what the research is saying for how our kids are doing and what's going on if you work with kids or if you're raising kids or both, is to just get anchored in your lived experience and what you're seeing. So take a minute. This is going to be like a word cloud when it comes up, and type in with your thumbs or on the browser on Menti what words describe how the kids you work with or live with or both, how they're doing. So just to get us centered. And if Menti is not working for you, the purpose of using this tool is engagement, not frustration. You can put those words into the chat. So we're going to take a minute. I'm going to wait, add in those words that describe how the kids are. And as you finish thumbing or typing, you can join me in just watching that word cloud evolve, it's always really interesting to see what stays in the middle or what changes. And if you are still adding words, we're going to take about 30 more seconds. I see there are still quite a few responses. Okay, if you're still typing, go ahead and submit wherever you are so that we can see your responses as well. In a moment, I'm going to turn over to a different question. And if you haven't already, go ahead and take a look. I feel like this is pretty reflective of where my kids are. I have been asking this question of how are the children? How are our young people? In almost every speaking engagement since 2020. And it is really encouraging, actually, to see. I haven't seen excited and happy at the center since the spring of 2020. And so I think that that's pretty powerful. You'll also see anxious and stressed are still in the center. But this is certainly a more optimistic view than we've seen. Okay, so if you have to use Menti in a second, I'm going to go over the slide. And if you're on your phone, it'll ask you if you want to advance or it will do it for you. I don't actually know what it looks like on the computer. But young people don't live by themselves. They live in the context of relationships. And for our purposes today, we are adults who care about, work with, raise young people. And when I'm thinking about kids, I'm thinking actually all the way into the early 20s. And so we're just going to do a little reflection on both sides. How are the children and how are their adults? And I love that the first one that came up really big, if you're looking, is so-so. And I identify with that on a personal side. So how are their grown-ups? How are the adults doing? It's so funny to me because the answers are coming in way faster, which I'm wondering if that means this is a reflection of how you are doing. I'm sorry, some of the purple coloring is pretty hard to see. But Lori, I'll send this presentation to you afterwards if you want to send it out to attendees so they can look more carefully. And we'll take another minute. So if you're summing, you don't have to fill out all of the fields, just the ones that really stick out to you. And if you're finished typing, go ahead and just watch as responses come in. And then my reminder is that if Mentimeter is not working for you and you're comfortable, you can add your answers directly into the chat too. And the question is, what words describe how the kids' adults are doing? So for those of you who cannot see the word cloud, I will just note that happy and excited do not show up in the center of this word cloud. I'm looking at anxious, burnt out, stressed, tired, worried, overwhelmed, and hopeful. That's what's in the center here. Okay, wherever you are, if you're still adding in words, go ahead and just submit so that we capture what your contributions are here. I do think it's worth noting the difference and what that means in the context of our relationships with kids and the interactions that we have with them. Okay, so we just have one more question, and this will help me in knowing where to really dig into as we're talking today and doing the presentation. This is longer form. So, open response. And again, this will just inform me on which pieces of the presentation maybe to spend time on or what questions to address. The question is, in case you're not on Menti or you can't see the screen, maybe you're called in, what are you worried or wondering about this school year in the context of young people? So when you're thinking about the kids you're working with or you're raising or the kids in your life in some other way, what are the worries that you have and what are things that you're wondering about? I'm going to read a few just because I realize some people call into these lunch webinars or midday webinars by phone. So I'm seeing how to help my kid manage big emotions, COVID, what if any adjustments will be needed, will we have to turn on a dime like the last 2 years, social interactions and social pressures, kids' needs and whether those needs will be met, politics, lack of social skills and self-control, the impact of teacher and staffing shortage, overall social emotional well-being, the influence of social media, how to best support our kids, catching kids up socially, if they'll have the resources they need, and if we have the resources we need, teachers and staff being stressed out. Okay, so wherever you are, go ahead and just submit. I'm going to stop sharing this screen, but I'm going to keep it up so that if you want to contribute, we can look back to that. And if you have added your responses, looking at them, I'm just going to ask for a quick check on chat. I know I'm having you go kind of back and forth with a lot of different tech, but in the chat, if you can tell me, since I can't see you, I'm curious, who is coming to this session really thinking as a parent, and who is coming to this session thinking as a professional, and who's blended? So I'm going to start, but I'm very curious, given what we just saw, who's thinking about this from a perspective as a parent, who's thinking on the professional side, and who's thinking about this both. Oh, thank you everybody for being really Zoom savvy and being so fast. Okay, we are very, oh, hello, Auntie. Mostly blended. And okay, so keep that coming because that's really good. And I'm going to hope if somebody who's very fast with their fingers can tell me if you see a cute redhead with a red hat on the screen, we're going to jump into content. Thank you, Megan. Okay, great. So, and this is my son, Justice, because if you meet your husband in social work school, you end up naming him something like Justice. And he started middle school this year. This is actually a real life photo of him trying the lock in middle school for the first time before the frustration threshold went up, which was just kind of a hilarious moment. So we're going to jump into content, and then we're going to protect some time for really being able to dig into conversation. So if you're Chrissy or somebody who was here with me last year, these first 2-3 slides are going to feel familiar because, thank you, April. I think he's beautiful too, assuming you're talking about my kid. Because it's really important for us to understand the context that our kids, whether the ones that we're working with or raising or both, are living in. So when we think about today's kids, first off, the research has changed in thinking about brain and body development. And so you've got kind of early childhood and it moves into adolescence starting as early today as 10. It now stretches all the way up until the end of your 25th year. So technically, people who are 25 or up until the day they turn 26 are still considered adolescents. So the way that I think about young people today is that science projects that our kids, and when I say our kids for the rest of the presentation, I mean the ones that are in our lives, either in a work environment, personal, or both, that they could actually live to be 100. The latest research out last year is that people could actually live to be 150, which is an awfully long time. But assuming a 100-year life as a real possibility, I think about childhood actually now lasting that kind of first quarter, the first 25 years. So if we think about young people and children today, and we take a look back, not just in our own lives, but in theirs, it's really important to situate ourselves in the fact that today's kids, from our babies all the way up into the early 20s who are kind of launching, have only lived in a world that's really defined by disruption and big global and social and economic and political forces that are significant and significantly faster than we've seen them before. So if you think about the news, there's a level of sensationalizing, but there's also a level of truth where, because of technology and innovation, and because of how quickly information can be shared and how globalized we are, things really are spinning and moving and shifting faster than they used to. We are more interconnected and interdependent globally, as evidenced by the pandemic. And so the lived experience of this generation of young people includes and starts with our kids who are just going into the workforce and college with when they were babies. 9/11 and the war on terror was when they were kids, when they were just being born. And for that group, if you follow them, kindergarten and the start of school was the Great Recession, but it was also when smartphones came out, smart technology. And so their memories, not many of us don't really remember life before 5 or have very few memories. So most of their remembered childhood has a smart technology, connected internet life to it. And of course, for that same group, those Gen Zers, young adulthood has been completely defined by not just COVID, but the racial reckonings, increased and more visible racial violence, anti-Black violence, and the economic crises that have accompanied the pandemic. So for us, for many of us on the line, we remember life that could have had complexity and challenge and been somewhat tumultuous, but wasn't so ever present in huge global problems being so up close and personal. But for our kids, this is all that they know. Whether I saw on the list of concerns, it's school shootings and the fear that goes with, if I go to school, will I die? And if that's a latent passive fear of because of the risk of gun violence, because of the risk of COVID and getting sick, or the sense of being globally connected and the amount of information that is consumed, the sense of political division. And so as we situate ourselves in context, because kids are raised in the context of their environment and experiences and relationships, we just need to acknowledge and accept that that's a part of their one and only childhood. This is just their reality that they're living in. As a mom, so I'm in that blended space where I think about young people for my work and my writing, and I also have these 2 kids, and my 2 godkids live with us in the summer. There's a little bit of grief and acceptance work that has to go with that, because I'm just sad on what they've missed out on in childhood. And it's that difference between the kids are happy and excited because they're living their life and they're being kids. And we are stressed and worried and tired and exhausted because we're holding all of the complexity. And obviously, as young people get older, they're holding that complexity as well, and they're experiencing it too. So understand that young people today are really these digital and disruption natives, that this is the life that they've been born into, that they've been raised in, that they've come to expect a level of access and globalization and interconnectedness, and also innovation and change and sort of updates and upgrades, whether it's on tech or in our life, and disruption, volatility, complexity, change, chaos. These are defining features. And so what that means for them in the long arc of their childhoods, not just the near term of the last 2 years, is that there are a group of young people who have a dependence practically and sometimes emotionally to technology. In fact, for those of you who have teens in your life, they actually have, or for those of you who struggle with your smartphone yourself, which I can be one, they've done some research on notifications from the phone, and that it actually triggers addiction chemicals that are as strong or stronger than crack. It is, I will tell you personally, I come from a long line of addicts and have lots of addiction in my family history. It's probably my biggest worry for that beautiful redhead middle schooler that I kept pushing off the phone, was activating potentially this predisposition to addiction by the digital notifications. So we can dig more into that, but I think learning to navigate the tech space, the social media piece, the notifications, and how that changes kids' attention span, how that changes their sort of emotional reactivity, is something that we could dig into, especially in terms of some tips and tricks for how to help them. So they are hyper-connected. One thing to know, if you didn't study adolescent development, is that, and this gets to those of you who talked about concerns with social skills, that adolescents, so tweens and teens, are designed, their brains are wired to be hyper social. It's why so many of us remember those teenager experiences so crisply and emotionally, because the emotional quality of being a teenager actually is a part of how the brain is learning and how it's developing and how it's sort of becoming a more mature adult brain. Same with our bodies. Our bodies, of course, undergo really incredible changes. What that means is that there was a lot of conversation about what happened for kids from a learning perspective. And I'm an educator and social worker by training. So lots of conversations about what happened on the education and learning side, but we haven't done enough talking about what happened to kids on the social and emotional development side. And in general, what we're seeing from research that's coming out is that young people are growing up fast and slow. So fast, socially and emotionally, because many of them during the pandemic were exposed to things that were older than they were. They were exposed to big, scary things like a pandemic or fear of dying or violence or changes in the economic structure of their house, changes in school, all of those pieces. That's the fast part. The slow part is there's a huge element of growing up that's social and that's in person. And without that there, you have these really interesting moments happening, and you can feel free to throw some of these in the chat. I talked to a second grade teacher last week who said she was so excited to go back to a normal year, didn't remember that her second graders have never been in school without social distancing and mask wearing, and they don't know how to sit on the carpet. They don't know how to walk in line if they're not distanced. You know, anything that involves healthy touch or proximity, these are things they haven't learned playing on the playground. So the second grade teacher is having to do that instructing and teaching to second graders, and when it would have been something done in pre-K or kindergarten. Similarly, our ninth graders never had a normal middle school experience. And so there's a lot that happens in the middle school tween years that was really disrupted for kids. So that has a developmental shift that we just need to be attuned to. It's not right or wrong, it's collective. Everybody went through it. And then what we also know on the other side of this slide here, you're talking about extremes, that communities and families and households were inflamed in political tensions, in things that were happening at the school board, at the community level, but also families who were struggling already. There was a real increase in what the challenges were during the pandemic. So one of the things that I just want to flag here is in the shift to normal, if you can't see me, I air quoted that, recovery takes a long time. And there are still a lot of families who are reeling and struggling from what happened in the last couple of years. And that struggle is still very present in the immediate term. There are also young people who the lights got turned on mental health conditions early, probably earlier than it would otherwise. So some of the estimates right now are that 1 out of every 5 or 1 out of every 6 kids is struggling with a mental health challenge or an actual clinical condition they could be diagnosed. And that's something we're going to see go up, I think, considerably, that will require a different level of care, particularly for those of us who have a social work background. The last piece that I'll throw in here that's really important to situate ourselves is that for as tricky and challenging as the circumstances have been for our young people, they're showing up in some of the most powerful ways that we've ever seen from a generation. These are young people who are very concerned with social issues, with their own safety and security, who are wanting to speak out and who are wanting to take action, and need a sense of agency and activation and autonomy in their own life. So we'll see in a little bit the ways in which purpose is so important for kids, and that there's an opportunity for them to take action in advocacy in local ways and small ways. So I talked about most of the slide that you're seeing. If you can see the slides, it's a picture. But just to sort of do a little bit of grounding here, some of you on the line are going to know much more about the brain science than I do. But I have been reading about and studying it for a long time. And that is just to understand that kids' brains and bodies are wired and rewired based on what they're going through and who they're with. And that certain things are turned on and the volume is turned up or down depending on how they're needing to respond to their life and what tasks and responsibilities and realities they're facing. And so there's sort of collective trends that we're tracking right now, those of us who are in the child well-being and youth development field, and other things that we're paying attention to. So if you are worried about, we're going to deal with the worry and then we're going to move over to the wonder. If you're worried about your kids right now, they might look like what you're seeing on the screen. And there's this real open question of, as we come out of the pandemic and we're seeing issues, when is it the place for intervention and services and support? And if you're asking that question of like, oh, is this because of COVID or is this is this something that really needs to be addressed? I would say anytime a kid needs help, they need help, regardless of the circumstances, or extra support and structures that are helpful and not harmful around them. But in general, we are seeing a level of sort of overload and overwhelm where there are just too many tasks and sort of information coming from all sides. So I just want to cut through this and be really practical in the immediate term. If you are working with or raising kids who seem really overloaded and overwhelmed right now, as much as you can whittle down the number of like deadlines and dates and focus on the quality of experiences over the quantity or the doing, they will be much better for it. So executive functioning, the front of the brain, which is really responsible for organizing and planning and decision-making and self-regulation, it's not developed until your mid-20s. That's one of the reasons why they changed how long childhood lasts when they discovered that, which means that our kids are still developing the part of their brain that's responsible for the planning and organizing and everything else. And when they're freaked out, when they're anxious, when they're stressed, when they're dealing with trauma, that sucks all of the energy that's in the front of the brain to the back. And it causes them to be very reactive and struggle with the planning and organization. If you have kids who already have attention issues or are neurodivergent, that's going to be even more complicated. I mentioned the social media, so there's just something to know about the fact that like attention span actually is changing based on TikTok videos, YouTube videos, content, notifications, and that we need to give kids practice getting quiet and staying focused. One of the things I do in my house is that sweet redhead from the beginning loves baseball. I just make him listen to Cardinals baseball games on the radio, and he's got to listen from the beginning to the end. He's obsessed with baseball, so it's not a punishment. He loves the Cardinals more than anything. But having him listen to something from the start to the beginning instead of doing multiple things at once has been a good personal practice. And then, of course, I mentioned the issues of safety and stability, which you're kind of seeing over there. You know, this is a group of young people who really just want to know that they're going to be okay. And safety is rated highest in my interviews with kids for book research or for work projects. They routinely will tell me, I just want to know I'm going to be okay. I just want to know my family is going to be okay. And the sort of symptoms of anxiety and stress are pretty high. So now let's shift gears. So that's the like context and complexity of the times that kids are growing up in, how that's changing their brain and body, and what that sort of means. So now we're going into this new school year, and there's an opportunity for you to partner. So I'm just going to think about like one kid. So if we take my redhead in the beginning, there's sort of a getting to know you process that becomes really crucial, not only for adults who are new in a child's life, but for adults who really haven't paused because we've all been surviving for the past 2 years to get to know who a kid is. So, this graphic, what you're seeing right here, really cuts across the research of what we know makes young people have a vibrant life, a life where they can thrive and experience well-being, and also what we know about basic needs, human development. But this is kind of the component parts of how you get to know who a kid is before you look at what you are really prioritizing. And so the first thing is really, and now I want to speak to the folks who are working with young people in the room. You know, you've got a new group of young people, new clients this year. I think the place to start is, what does the roster or registration form tell you? And checking your own biases, beliefs, and understanding about what that means. What does it tell you about who they are, where they live, the various social determinants that tell you what types of advantages or disadvantages, opportunities or opportunity scarcity they face, that start to give you a picture of how hard or easy life is on a daily basis, and how the world is experienced by this kid and how the world experiences this kid. This is an important place to start because it can be really damaging. It's profiling, but it's where our rosters and our registration forms and everything else that we collect in student information systems, what they tell us and what we see, and the assumptions and, again, the biases that we bring in. So this is sort of a checking place that should immediately go to the next step of understanding, where is this kid developmentally? So when I'm thinking developmentally, I think about where are they socially, emotionally, and cognitively. I'm a big advocate for, if you've taken a child to a pediatrician's office, or you remember when you were at the pediatrician's office yourself, you would get these, actually, I think I have one somewhere near me. Maybe I don't. You would get these charts. Oh, I do. So if you're on video, you can see it. So these charts, and they would chart your weight and your height and your age. And what's so important about these charts, besides seeing where a kid falls, are they in the 50th percentile, the 75th percentile, is my younger son has consistently been in the 20th percentile since the day he was born, my older son in the 95th. So my pediatrician is able to see what is normal for them. What is that personalized picture of healthy development? So when I'm thinking about age and stage and development, it's what is on track for this particular kid, given their particular circumstances. During the pandemic, did you see a dip in social development? Or maybe they were a part of a core group of friends and family, and they actually grew and had an uptick in social development. Where are they emotionally? So having that picture of where people are developmentally comes right behind sort of understanding demographically and lifestyle, life circumstance-wise where they are. The next piece is having a little bit of cross-training in healthcare. So there's a lot of research that has been coming out on how impactful certain health activities can be. You know, are kids getting their bodies moving? Are they eating? Are they sleeping? But also the role of things like inflammation and injury on the body. If you're in the mental health space, the connection between inflammation and mental health conditions for things like OCD or anxiety, even psychosis, is pretty significant. And I think we're just starting the beginning of a real boon in research in that area. And so we want to understand the health profile of kids if they have a chronic condition that they're struggling with. One of the things as a mom and a practitioner that has blown my mind is that I really never got any training on like very simple vitamin deficiencies or mineral deficiencies that can cause symptoms that mimic mental health issues. You know, iron deficiency, vitamin A, vitamin D are two of the ones that come up to mind. And we might end up medicating and treating kids for mental health issues when really they need blood work and supplements or other foods. So there's a whole level there. I think that there's more work for us to do on. We are social animals. And so another part of getting to check in and know kids is understanding who their people are, what communities they are a part of, who the adults and peers are in their life, and what those relationships are like. You can work in really powerful ways with kids to actually have them kind of map their world for you, and gives you a ton of insights into the quality of relationship and social connection they have. It's a beautiful activity to do with kids, especially as we come into this new school year, and can be very instructive in helping us figure out what extra support they might need or activities or programs could be good for them. And finally, you don't really know a kid until you know their signature style. That is everything from the quality of their character, to if they're a character, their quirks, their sense of humor, their interests, the things that they're passionate about, that they want to talk about. And so that is sort of the rounding out of that profile. So my recommendation would be, as you look at this picture, and hopefully the slides will be passed, that if you're thinking about this from a parenting perspective, this is a really good check for yourself on how am I experiencing my own kids, and how are the adults that they're going into a new classroom or a new program or a new counselor, what do they know and what should they know, and how can we be partnering in care for them? If you are a professional, this is a beautiful way to think about intake, to think about group activities, but also conversations that you're having with the caretakers of that young person and with the young person themselves. It's really empowering as kids get older if they can take stock of their own portrait. So ultimately, we want to see, and thanks, Chrissy, I see that in the chat. And again, I am following the chat. So yes, blood work and other things. I mean, it's just such a mind blower of that redhead. He was super, super tired and seemed really depressed in second grade. And he ended up having terrible sleep apnea and anemia. And we got his tonsils out, we got him a melatonin, we got him some good sleep, and we got his iron levels up, and it completely resolved. I think we don't think about that all the time. Okay, so Lori mentioned the next book that I have a book coming out in May, hopefully in May, called Whole Child, Whole Life. And it's all about what young people need to thrive, especially how they can thrive. Is it possible to thrive in the life that they're in, with all the context that we talked about early on? And so here's the picture from the research, but also a really good checklist for us on what the qualities of thriving look like. So kids are thriving when they feel all of these things. And so the way that I think about thriving, and we'll see it in a minute, is sort of a state of being that you can go in and out of, and that you can thrive in some spaces, even if you're not thriving in others. So if you're a professional who's working with kids, I would ask, how do you get to this place in your setting or situation where you're working with kids? What are you doing and offering and cultivating, and how are you connecting with kids so that they feel safe and supported, healthy and healing, which is an active process, as we know, rooted and connected? They feel like they belong. They feel like this is a place for them. And that novelty and curiosity and learning is engaged, and they have a sense of mattering. Bonnie, I see your chat. I have no idea if the slides will be available, but they are available from me to you. So Lori, if you're on the chat, if you can answer Bonnie's question, I would love to get these slides to you for sure. So this is just a really good litmus test. In my own life, I actually, so this is like such an embarrassing confession, but like I use this as my own sort of check-in with my kids when I want to know how they're doing at in school and after school. And Sarah Evans just wrote in the chat, I think these qualities apply to people of all ages. So Sarah, thank you so much. The reason why the book is called Whole Child, Whole Life is that the research doesn't change. This is actually everything that we need too. And so if we can focus on helping young people to establish this now in their early life, it's not going to change, even if they live to be 150. So you can take that picture and you can actually apply it to your own life. Are you in a work environment where you feel safe and supported, healthy and healing, a partnership, a marriage, a family of origin, family of choice? That this is your picture of thriving as well. So the other thing that I wanted to mention, so here's that little one in the 20th percentile, and his super giant teacher, Jason, who was also his camp director for a number of years. So we are so excited that he is his fourth grade picture or fourth grade teacher. So I want to talk about what the research says on like the basics. So I actually have an article coming out tomorrow on this is my own personal, this is the research on what the basic needs are for kids. And it is my own personal checklist on, is Harrison experiencing this in Jason's class? Are these things present? And back to Sarah's point in the chat, I'm asking myself the same thing. Do I have this in my work life and in my personal life? And oh my God, if I don't, I need to get it right away. So I'm bringing in basic needs because that, of course, is the thing that has to happen first. If you know Maslow's hierarchy, I will tell you that I think it needs to be flattened. So when I think about basic needs, and you look at the research, it's really clear that to survive and to live your life, you actually need to experience all of the things here on the left-hand side for adults. So, you know, you've got to have those basics met. Good, healthy air, food, clothing, sleep, those pieces. Sleep is huge. We could talk about sleep more. You've got to feel safe. You have to have a sense of belonging and purpose, which is mattering. You need to know that you matter, that your life means something. Kids have some other basic needs that we don't talk about and that Maslow doesn't mention. In order to be healthy and to grow, kids have to have time to play. They need time to just play in a way that is not programmed or structured or scripted. It is a part of the humanity of childhood. Rest and to process and shift down. They've got to have space to explore and experience the world and make connections and have those synapses firing in the brain. And they need people. So when I look at this list, I will say, I guess I'm a little bit of an adult child because I feel like for myself, and I'd be curious what others think too in the chat, I feel like I also need all of these things, and that if there's not enough downtime in my life, or I feel like I'm not connected to community, something feels a little off. But this is my checklist that I'm thinking about. And here's the deal. You can feel a sense of belonging, even if there are essential needs not being met, or you can be in a space that's not safe, an unsafe neighborhood, or COVID, the height of the pandemic, and still feel an incredible sense of purpose. So just to dispel some of the Maslow's hierarchy thing, the original theory was you had to have the essentials met completely before you could experience safety, and all your safety needs met before you could experience belonging. And I just want to sort of say, like, kids need all of these things, and even if you can't provide one, do whatever you can for the others. If you're a parent and you're worried about your kids, there was one situation in my life where I did pull the card where I asked to have a child changed in a class where he felt very unsafe, did not feel like he belonged, did not feel like he was a part of the community. And it was hard, and it was the best choice we ever made for him. And the teacher he ended up with is, I call her his teacher mom. She's just super important. So I'm just gonna do a quick preview, Lori, to hopefully a next open classroom, which is Whole Child, Whole Life is coming out in May. We talked about just the basic needs and like what to check on with kids and how to know if they're thriving, and like thinking about that kind of as a barometer of like, okay, how are they doing? How do we know them? How do we know how they're doing? And are their basic needs met? But there are actually 10 practices. It just was really lucky that it was 10 that go with young people being able to thrive. And this gets to Karen talking about belonging. So, oh, sorry, I'm a little happy there on the mouse. So here's a picture of the full set of things that young people need to thrive overall. And again, we don't have time to dig in, but I'd love to do a future session on this. So, young people need their basic needs met, mental health, investments in personal interests and their sort of purpose, relationships and community, identity and culture, community and belonging. So there that is. They need to have a sense of how the past is impacting them and also their present, but also we need to help them plan for the possibility of a long life and the chance to experience the beauty of the world and to show, to be a force for good, to be able to be of service. So I'm leaving you with, just a few minutes for questions and this flag for what I hope is a fire-free session 3 where we can dig into the 10. But as it relates to this beginning of the year, being able to focus on, do I know who my kid is? Do I know where they are in that kind of barometer of thriving? And are their basic needs being met? So I'm going to turn it back over to Lori. I know that I think we've got like 2 minutes for rapid questions.
Yes, and just to let you know that, yes, these slides are going to be available on our website. I'm going to put the Open Classroom website in the chat here, and give us maybe 72 hours. We will get a recording of the presentation on there as well. So you can also see that on YouTube. It'll be about 72 hours before we can get all that posted, but you will be able to find all those resources. I also put in the chat a link to Stephanie's website and to her book, but also in the email that you received to get the Zoom link for this webinar, her book link is in there as well. So you can always go back to that and check. But so if you have questions, feel free to stick them in the chat. And I've got some. So how much truth should you tell your kids about the pandemic, about challenges happening in their family?
Okay, so this is going to be like rapid response, right?
Yes.
I think we have 1 minute. I would say it depends completely on where they are developmentally and the level of anxiety that they might experience. So I'll use the example of alcoholism, which is not the pandemic in our family, which is that I knew that it was important to talk to my kids about it early and often. And we started by talking about it as an allergy because one of my kids has a food allergy. So we talked about how members of our family had an allergy to alcohol. And as they have aged, we've talked about how that allergy can make you sick and then eventually introduce the language of alcoholism. So for the pandemic, you want to not be an alarmist, but you also want to answer the real questions that they have just in a way that is developmentally sound and has their needs centered and providing support, but not false information.
And then we had someone say, I know someone with a toddler who's tech savvy and talks to a smart speaker. Should you encourage or discourage toddlers from befriending Alexa? Sorry if I said that and it went off in your house.
No, that's so funny. So I'm just going to recommend a book. There's a woman who used to be the reporter, education reporter for NPR. Her name's Anya Kamenetz. She just came out with a book last week called The Stolen Year, where she is reporting on what happened to kids in the pandemic. But a couple of years ago, when her child was a toddler, she wrote a book called The Art of Screen Time. And it's a very good one. There's another book by a woman, Deborah Heitner, called Screen Wise, which if you have older kids, talks about sort of where and how to find the balance. We do not have an Alexa in my house. But again, I told you we also are aware of some of the predispositions that our boys might have. And so I'm extra careful.
Well, Stephanie Malia Krauss, you are phenomenal. Thank you so much for all of this information. Someone did ask if they can see your On Fire webinar. Yes, if you go to the link that I put in the chat, that will show you all previous webinars, so you can get This webinar will be there in a couple of days, as well as resources, including the Menti boards. Hopefully we can get those from you, Stephanie, and the slides that you have, we will post those. Your previous webinar, this webinar, all of that information will be on the Open Classroom webpage. So thank you so much for this great information. We will absolutely have you back, and we'll bring marshmallows and a safe fire next time. Maybe we could do it in the cold weather. But congratulations on your current book. We look forward to the new book that's coming out in May of 2023. To all of you who attended, thank you so much for your time and your attention. I hope this was useful. I know I learned a lot. I took a lot of notes for myself and my family. So thank you so much for joining us on Open Classroom, and we hope we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Take good care.